In the heart of Ouagadougou, the presidential palace stood cloaked in silence under a starless sky. Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's steely leader, lay awake, his mind restless with the weight of governance. At precisely 3 a.m., the secure satellite phone shattered the stillness, its shrill ring jolting him upright. Cold sweat dampened his brow. Only a select few worldwide had access to this emergency line. Who dare call at this hour? Mr. President, a voice rasped, thick with urgency yet edged with resolve. This is Foreign Minister Hossein from Tehran. Forgive the hour, but our cities burn as we speak. Traoré's pulse quickened. Through bulletproof windows, he saw his security detail snap into motion, their silhouettes sharp against the dim courtyard. The world had been gripped by escalating conflict in the Middle East, but Africa had remained a distant observer. Until now. Minister Hossein, Traoré replied, his military training steadying his voice. How can Burkina Faso assist Tehran in this crisis? Mr. President, as Israeli warplanes strike our people, we've uncovered a greater threat. Israel is conducting covert operations across Africa, targeting nations that dare to stand independent. Hossein's tone sharpened. Our intelligence confirms they plan to use African soil as a staging ground for attacks on us and our allies. They treat your continent as their military playground. Traoré's blood chilled. Months earlier, he had exposed Israeli surveillance networks in Burkina Faso, but the scope Hossein described dwarfed those findings. His mind raced, weighing the implications. What do you propose? Traoré asked, his voice low, deliberate. A historic partnership, Hossein replied. Iran offers Burkina Faso advanced missile defense systems to counter any external threat. Naval access agreements to bolster your influence over coastal neighbors. And energy technology to free you from Western oil dependency. The offer was staggering, a blueprint to transform Burkina Faso from a landlocked, resource-scarce nation into a regional powerhouse. But Traoré knew such gifts carried a price. In exchange for what? He pressed, his tone cutting. Diplomatic support in global forums, Hossein said smoothly. Iranian technical advisors stationed in Burkina Faso. And, if necessary, permission to use your airspace for defensive operations. The words landed like a grenade. Defensive operations could mean missile strikes targeting Israeli interests across Africa. Traoré's grip tightened on the phone. Minister, you're asking me to make Burkina Faso a combatant in your war. No, Mr. President, Hossein countered, his voice ablaze. This war already engulfs Africa. Israel has military advisors in 12 African nations, uses your ports for intelligence, and operates with impunity. You can remain their victim or become our partner in resistance. The call ended abruptly, leaving Traoré in suffocating silence. His hands trembled as he summoned an emergency cabinet meeting. By 4 a.m., the conference room crackled with tension. Intelligence reports littered the mahogany table, and the air was thick with unease. Sir, Defense Minister Sanu began, his face haggard, Iran's intelligence about Israeli activities exceeds our worst fears. He projected satellite imagery showing suspicious movements at Israeli-linked sites in neighboring countries, arms shipments, communication hubs, training camps. They're building a network across Africa. Foreign Minister Cabaret added, her voice grim. Iran proposes a counter-network. Nations joining their partnership would form an alliance to halt Israeli influence continent-wide. Intelligence Chief Ouagadougou presented the most damning evidence. Sir, Israeli assets operate in 12 African countries. Not just surveillance. Active military advisors, weapons systems, intelligence operations. They treat Africa as an extension of their Middle Eastern strategy. He highlighted specifics. Ethiopian units trained by Israelis for cross-border missions. South African ports servicing Israeli naval intelligence. Congolese mineral sites guarded by Israeli contractors reporting to Tel Aviv. Iran offers to neutralize this, Cabaret said, leaning forward. Their defense systems would dismantle Israeli surveillance. Economic partnerships would end reliance on Israeli-linked firms. Intelligence sharing would expose every operation on our continent. But accepting makes us targets, Traoré observed, rubbing his temples where a headache throbbed. His voice dropped to a whisper. This intelligence suggests we're already targets. We just haven't acted. The room fell silent. Traoré's gaze hardened as he made his decision. Schedule a secure video conference with Tehran by noon. Tell them President Traoré demands their full proposal. His advisors exchanged alarmed glances. Engaging Iran during active conflict would thrust Burkina Faso into a global spotlight. Sir, Ouagadougou cautioned, Israeli intelligence will detect this immediately. Our relationship with them shifts permanently. Perhaps it's time it did, Traoré replied, steel in his voice. Africa has been a chessboard for foreign powers too long. Today, we start playing our own game. By noon the following day, the secure video conference with Tehran was underway, its urgency palpable even through the encrypted line. On the screen, Iranian officials, their expressions taut, unveil the dossier of explosive intelligence. Satellite imagery, intercepted communications, and informant reports exposed Israel's covert operations across Africa. Secret bases, unauthorized surveillance, and military advisors embedded in 12 nations. The evidence was irrefutable. Africa was a battleground in a war it had not declared. Foreign Minister Hussein's voice cut through the static. Mr. President, Iran offers Burkina Faso cutting-edge defense systems, missile shields, drones, cybersecurity tools. We propose economic partnerships for energy independence, freeing you from Western control. But this is bigger than one nation. It's a continental stand against exploitation. Ibrahim Traoré leaned forward, his jaw clenched. You're asking me to risk Burkina Faso's future on your conflict. Why should Africa trust Iran's motives? Hussein's gaze was unyielding. Because we face the same enemy. Israel's operations erode your sovereignty as they do ours. Their plans include using African territory to strike us and our allies. Join us, and we empower Africa to resist. The Iranians detailed their offer. A defense pact for African nations willing to counter Israeli influence, backed by Iran's military technology and economic investment. They showcased missile defense systems capable of neutralizing aerial threats, naval agreements to secure trade routes, and energy projects for self-sufficiency. Most compelling was their intelligence-sharing network, designed to dismantle Israeli operations across the continent. Traoré's response stunned his advisors. This intelligence threatens all of Africa, not just Burkina Faso. Any partnership must involve the African Union and serve the entire continent. Defense Minister Sanu whispered, Sir, involving the African Union, this quickly risks chaos. Chaos is already here. Traoré shot back, his voice low but fierce. If Hussein's evidence is true, we're at war without knowing it. It's time we fought back. By dusk, Traoré had initiated encrypted communications with African leaders, sharing Iran's dossier. The responses were immediate: shock, anger, and urgency. Most presidents were unaware of Israeli activities on their soil. Surveillance hubs in Nigeria, training camps in Chad, intelligence networks in Senegal. The revelations sparked a continent-wide reckoning. The next morning, Traoré proposed an emergency African Union virtual summit, scheduled for the following day. The speed of events left his cabinet reeling. Sir, Foreign Minister Traoré cautioned, we're moving too fast. We risk alienating Western allies. We've been their pawns long enough, Traoré replied, his eyes burning with resolve. This is Africa's moment. The summit, convened on day 3, was a firestorm. Iranian representatives, granted observer status, presented their evidence to a stunned assembly. Hussein addressed the leaders, his voice commanding. Africa is no bystander. Israel's operations violate your sovereignty, exploit your resources, and endanger your people. Iran offers partnership, not dominance, to build a continent that bows to no one. The debate was heated. Some nations feared entanglement. Aligning with Iran invites sanctions, argued Ghana's delegate, his tone strained. Our economies could collapse. Others saw a historic opportunity. We've been exploited for centuries, countered Algeria's president, her voice defiant. Iran's offer gives us the tools to reclaim our destiny. Traoré's speech silenced the room. This isn't about choosing Iran's side. It's about choosing Africa's. Ignore this threat, and we remain puppets. Act now, and we shape our future. By evening, a groundbreaking resolution passed. The African Union would form a task force to monitor foreign military activities, with Iran providing intelligence. Nations joining the coalition would access Iranian technology and economic support to counter external threats. For countries inspired by Burkina Faso, committed immediately. Back in Ouagadougou, the repercussions were swift. Israeli intelligence, alerted to the summit, intensified surveillance. Western diplomats issued veiled threats of economic restrictions. At home, Traoré's cabinet grappled with the stakes. "Sir," Traoré said during a midnight briefing, "accepting Iran's partnership makes our ports, our airspace, our people targets." "We were targets already," Traoré countered. "Israel's operations prove it. The question is whether we hide or fight." Intelligence Chief Ouagadougou presented urgent reports. Israeli-linked facilities in Mali and Côte d'Ivoire were expanding, with new arms shipments detected. "They're preparing for escalation," he warned. "We must act now." Traoré nodded, his decision firm. Accelerate outreach to African leaders. Every nation must know this threat and prepare to receive Iran's first defense shipment. By day 4, the transformation began. Iran delivered a missile defense system to Burkina Faso, its technicians arriving under heavy security to train local forces. 3 African nations expelled Israeli advisors after uncovering unauthorized operations. The African Union's task force identified covert bases in 2 countries, sparking public outrage. But the toll on Traoré was immediate. On day 5, an assassination attempt, a car bomb outside the palace, failed narrowly. His security detail doubled, and his family was moved to a safe house. Western media labeled him a provocateur, while Israeli diplomats accused Burkina Faso of destabilizing Africa. Yet in Ouagadougou's streets, crowds rallied, chanting his name. For the first time in decades, Burkina Faso felt alive with purpose. As Traoré stood in his office that night, Foreign Minister Traoré approached. "Sir, the African Union reports 6 more nations are considering the coalition. Iran's support is galvanizing the continent." Traoré's gaze was distant. "This is just the spark. The fire comes next, and our enemies are ready. We must be too." By day 6, the African Union's virtual summit had reshaped the continent's trajectory. The assembly, still reeling from Iran's revelations, buzzed with resolve as leaders from across Africa solidified their stance against foreign interference. Ibrahim Traoré, now a beacon of defiance, stood at the helm, his voice carrying the weight of a continent's awakening. Iranian representatives, led by Foreign Minister Hossein, shared updates. Missile defense systems were operational in Burkina Faso. Intelligence networks had exposed Israeli operations in real time, and energy project proposals were ready for 3 nations. But the mood was tense, time was running out. Traoré's address set the tone. "We've ignited a spark, but sparks can be snuffed out. Israel's operations grow bolder, Western threats loom, and our unity is our only shield. Today, we decide if Africa bows or rises." The summit delivered historic results. The African Union formalized a Continental Security Pact, enabling joint responses to external threats. The task force, armed with Iranian intelligence, uncovered new Israeli-linked sites in Kenya and Gabon, prompting outrage. 6 nations expelled Israeli advisors, citing sovereignty breaches. Iran, honoring its pledge, supplied defense technology without dictating terms, earning wary trust from cautious leaders. In Ouagadougou, the cost of leadership hit hard. On day 6, a second assassination attempt, a sniper shot during a secure convoy, missed Traoré by inches. His security team traced the attack to foreign operatives, though no nation was named. Israeli cyber attacks targeted Burkina Faso's government servers, while Western media branded Traoré a reckless instigator. Trade restrictions tightened, spiking fuel prices and testing public patience. Yet Burkina Faso's people stood firm. Rallies flooded the capital, their chants resounding. Africa rises. Traoré's vision, a continent free from foreign control, had become a rallying cry. In private, however, the strain was evident. Late that night, Defense Minister Sanu found Traoré in his office, studying intelligence reports, his face etched with exhaustion. "Sir," Sanu said quietly, "you're carrying a continent's hopes. Let us help bear the load." Traoré's eyes didn't leave the papers. "If I waver, Sanu, the dream dies. Africa's waited too long." The dream surged forward. By day 7, the Continental Security Pact transformed Africa's defenses. Burkina Faso's missile shield, powered by Iranian technology, deterred aerial threats. Intelligence sharing exposed surveillance networks in Rwanda and Benin, leading to swift action. Iran's energy proposals, solar and geothermal plants, began planning in two nations, promising independence from Western oil. The global stage called, and Traoré seized the moment. On the 7th day, he addressed the United Nations via a virtual emergency session, his image broadcast worldwide. The assembly fell silent as he spoke. When Tehran called at midnight, Traoré said, his voice steady yet charged, "They didn't ask us to fight their war. They exposed a war already waged against Africa. Exploitation, surveillance, control." He gestured to the African delegates, now a united front. For centuries, our continent was a battlefield for others' wars. Today, we're no longer pawns. We shape our alliances, our security, our future. He paused, the weight of his words sinking in. That 3 a.m. call woke Africa to its power, and that awakening is worth every risk. The applause echoed across the globe, from UN screens to public squares in Lagos and Algiers. Social media blazed with messages of African pride, while analysts grappled with the shift in global power. In Ouagadougou, crowds gathered, cheering not just for Traoré, but for a shared destiny. Back at the palace, Traoré returned to a nation transformed. The once fearful capital now pulsed with purpose. Foreign Minister Cabaret greeted him with a faint smile. "Sir, 8 more nations have joined the Security Pact. Iran's support is reshaping Africa faster than we dreamed." Traoré nodded, but his gaze was somber. "The work's just begun. Our enemies are regrouping, and we must stay vigilant." Intelligence Chief Ouagadougou approached, his expression grave. "Sir, reports show Israeli operatives shifting to neighboring Niger and Togo. Western sanctions may tighten further. We need to prepare." Traoré's jaw tightened. "Then we fortify our defenses, deepen our coalition, and keep our people united. Africa's voice isn't a moment, it's a movement." As he stepped onto the palace balcony, overlooking a city alight with hope, Traoré felt history's weight. That 3 a.m. call had sparked a revolution, not of arms, but of will. Africa, long a stage for foreign games, had claimed its role as a player. And Ibrahim Traoré, once a soldier, now a visionary, knew the risks were far from over. But for the first time, the continent stood ready, together.